Greetings, Earthlings.
Hello.
And Lifehack Quacks. This is our first episode of a new and running series called Original Lifehackers or Old School Lifehackers, however you want to think of them. In the case of tonight's topic subject, fellow Earthling, he is dearly departed from us, and his name is Osho. Our friend and podcast co-host from the planet Mars, Steve P, who's here with me, Marcus Vanini. Steve is one of the few people I've known in the country known as the United States of America to be familiar with Osho. So we thought, although he can be a controversial figure, he's an interesting. He was definitely unconventional for his time, and that's just to give you context. This series is going to be about the person could be alive today, but somebody who's very unconventional and goes against the grain. And Osho was definitely that person to the 1950s, 60s, 70s until he died in the 80s. So
he died in 1990.
Oh, 1990, huh? Yeah. Well, that being said, Steve, can you tell us who Osho was and a little bit about his legacy and what made him such an extraordinary individual?
Yeah. I'll start off with a quote from him that I found really interesting. He said, "I am not interested at all to convert anybody to my ideology. I don't have any. Secondly, I believe that the very effort to convert anybody is violence. It is interfering in his individuality, in his uniqueness, in his freedom."
So it's control.
Yeah, so that's his philosophy. He's not trying to force anything down people's throats because the world has too many people that are telling you what to think. Yeah. He just wants you to think, not to think the way that he thinks. So he's really just trying to expand people's perceptions, and that's what I love about Osho. So he's from India, obviously. And he was a professor of philosophy. Yeah. So he did a lot of public speaking, and he wrote a lot of books. What was the number you said earlier?
I think over 600, yeah.
Yeah, so he's got a lot of material. And he also headed up some communities, one being in Oregon. I think that was in the early 80s, too, with people that kind of gravitated towards his message. So how I got into Osho, like you mentioned that I was privy to him, my mom had some Osho books laying around the house when I was 18 or 19. So once my journey of self-discovery started, I picked up those books and they just blew my mind because like it's pretty like almost spiritual type of stuff, but he's so like free and open-minded about it that it was like it resonated with me when I was only focused on partying and fitting in with people. Like that's how on point his message is.
Part of what made him controversial, I assume.
Yeah.
I mean, at least when I went to his ashram in India, I didn't know anything about him. But I had a few weekends available, and people said, you might want to go check out this place. You can drive 3 hours from Bombay, and people from all over the world. And I don't know, there I guess, talking to different people, I didn't really see this on the Wikipedia page or other public bios, but it's sort of understood that he was one of the, I don't know what the word is, but he helped ignite the Cultural Revolution of the 60s and 70s in the West.
Yeah.
So free love.
Yeah, like the hippie, free love, open-mindedness type of thing. Yeah, and I have some questions about that for you that I wrote down. What, like with Osho's ashram, what differentiated it from any other life experience that you had?
One of the things that catches you, most people initially, is you're not just let in. So it doesn't matter how much money you have or anything. it's not that there's like some spirituality test, but it's a long 15 minutes if you've had an active sexual life, because you basically get tested for diseases and HIV before you can go in. So that certainly strikes you, but you know, they have super modern facilities, very zen, very beautiful. The things that stand out, you have to wear robes to be on the grounds. So
Nice.
burgundy robes most of the time during the day. There's different style ones. Then there's white robes for ceremonies at night. The ceremonies are, the main one is a good 2 hours where you do a solid hour of, maybe you want to touch on some of his different meditations, but like dynamic meditation, other meditations where you're dancing, breathing, just free form, all sorts of crazy movements. Then at the end, you hit the floor for 15 minutes and just meditate. And then they'll have Osho projected up on a screen in the middle of this big pyramid. And there's pyramids all around the place. Where, you know, beautiful pools, gardens. It's definitely an interesting place. There's usually like chill out parties every night. But going back to the getting tested for AIDS, is they want people to just be. So that gets rumored outside to the rest of the world is like it's some great place for orgies and yada yada, but it's not like that at all. People are there to like spiritually connect. A lot of people that I met went there as visitors, then decided to work there for 6 months. I mean, people from all around the world, though. Does that hit on some of the foods also something that stood out to me? So if you're not really educated as to how important food is to your overall health and information to your vessel, the food is super clean, organic, like it's definitely about all the right inputs.
And what was your biggest learning experience from it?
It's not wise to go, like Pune is a city of like 10 million people.
Uh-huh.
It's more jungle-like than Bombay even. Bombay is like, nobody knows the real number, but probably Mumbai for the politically correct, although 90% of the people that I know from Bombay call it Bombay, not the new political speak of the city. Bombay is probably like 35 million people, maybe 40 million. Nobody really knows. There's just so many people not counted. But I think you read Shantaram recently. I learned about wild dog packs.
Yep.
One of my great lessons was it's not real smart to go too far off the reservation at 3 or 4 in the morning, because those dogs are like, the best way I compared it was to the movie Jurassic Park, where like, where they're getting chased by velociraptors, and the velociraptors are communicating, you know, to each other, and they're as smart as you are smarter. They know how to hunt. So I barely made it back over the wall after getting in a little adventure, and
that's no joke either.
Like it I tried some of my first like hypnosis sessions there. Sort of Thai yoga massage, involved a lot of stretching, and then meditation sessions, painting meditations, where you're like,
that's cool.
All sorts, and you're outdoors for just about anything you do. You're not like in these confined, stuffy rooms.
Sounds like a place I want to visit.
Definitely worth it.
And then going back to the dynamic meditation, that's amazing. And in this book, actually, Meditation by Osho, he goes into these dynamic meditations where it's like 4 parts where the first one is it's shaking. The first part is just shaking. You shake everything out. And And I think what he recommends is 15 minutes a piece, but like you can do it for 5 minutes and get a lot of benefit.
I've done less in the morning just to like wake up.
Yeah, whatever works for you. So the shaking, and Elliot Holmes takes a lot out of that from the shaking and stuff like that with his bioenergizer warm-ups.
Even Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
I had a friend bring me to one of Tony Robbins' thing in London when I lived there. And he does all these things like that, like just getting people to shake like a zombie and do different fun things, and teaches those.
It's such a release, and it breaks those neurotic holding patterns because everyone's just like this, like so tensed up. So it really releases that.
Well, a shout out to Tony Robbins on that, but to see a room full of English people do it, it just shows you the power and influence that guy has.
So that's the first part, and then the second part is dancing. So you dance for the same amount of time, and then it's stillness, where you're standing, but you focus on one point for that same amount of time. And then the last one, you lie down with your eyes closed, and by that point, everything is out of you. You're just so at peace. So by the time you lay down, you're just in the zone. You go into a pretty deep meditation, and much deeper than if you're like a neurotic person who just says, I'm just going to sit down and meditate. It's not going to work that way. So his like really gets you into that state and then throws you into that meditation.
Yeah.
So it's really effective. That's why I really like his techniques.
Yeah, I went 3 times to Osho's. So.
Damn. I didn't know that.
And that was over a course of probably 3 or 4 years. The last one was pretty funny. Like I brought friends from London who were just like crazy partiers. So we were like a wrecking crew. I mean, I remember like I actually had to leave one of the silent parts because my dear friend / whatever at the time, Libet, was, she was just fucking nuts, and she was making me laugh and like just doing the craziest shit in the robe and like pranking people in there, and I just and then it would go silent and we were all trying not to laugh, and that's making you laugh.
Yeah, when you're trying not to laugh.
And a huge pyramid of people being very serious about that silence. It was.
Damn. And yeah, that's a segue into another topic I wanted to talk about: lightheartedness and not taking anything too seriously. Because Osho stressed that.
And he probably would have been on board with us because we were definitely the kooks of the group that last time.
Yeah. Like
first time I went on my own, just by myself. I think, and then I went with people second time, and a group the third. So it was different experiences each time.
Yeah. And yeah, he really talked about not taking anything too seriously. Yeah. And if you watch like the videos of his lectures and speeches, he's just like messing with people at some points too. He's just like, someone asked him about like if he advocates like men to be players or women to be promiscuous, and he's like, the person said, you seem to be more like Hugh Hefner than a spiritual guru. And he goes, I'm a spiritual playboy. That was his response to it. So he takes everything so lightly.
Well, that's because I think as anybody deep in philosophy, he's got to like how much just bullshit we're surrounded with.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, he really.
When it's all bullshit.
He cuts through all that bullshit because even like these spiritual gurus are so like uptight, and you could tell they're just not being authentic. Like,
like politicians and other leaders,
it's all
they made fun of.
Yeah, and he really cuts through that bullshit.
Yeah.
Tells you to just not care what people think, to choose love over fear. You can't be in fear of like what other people imagine you as and labels and things like that. You just have to be free.
Sort of I don't know if you've got other questions, but a last remark I would share with people, and people who've gone to India or from India would know this, but something I'll never forget is from Osho's ashram to a famous place for mostly tourists called the German Bakery. which was actually bombed in 2010. So about 2 years after the big Bombay bombings, terrorists, weirdest stuff, who knows behind it. But in walking there, you've got to cross a typical Indian city road where there's thousands of motorcycles, oxen, cars.
It's just a stream of everything.
It is a stream of like nothing you can imagine going each direction. And if you're from the West especially, you know, you're just like, I'm not fucking crossing that. I'm not gonna make it. And then you see some like 90-year-old woman do it. And it's funny, there's just a flow. And India is like that in general. It's just somehow everything works, even though on paper it shouldn't. And once you just step out and you just trust that you're gonna make it, man, go with the flow and you get across. You don't even, you know, it's just like, it's kind of the way Indian traffic works, and everybody's honking, and it's this chaos, but it all just, you get there.
Life.
Yeah. It's one of those many things in India where if you are a control freak or a person who has to have it your way, just don't go. You know, you have to be able to let go and trust.
So I have a couple Osho quotes too.
Nice.
To finish with.
Yeah.
So one of them is, if I am really a guide to you, all of my guidance will be to lead you to your inner guide.
Nice.
And the last one is...
True God. In you.
Yeah, that's it. And the last one, experience life in all possible ways. Good, bad, bitter, sweet, dark, light, summer, winter. Experience all the dualities. Don't be afraid of experience, because the more experience you have, the more mature you become. Get out there and live.
You got it. Well, we thank you all for downloading and checking out this podcast. We appreciate any reviews you could leave at iTunes. And if you have any questions, suggestions, vibes, unicorn pictures you want to send,
Definitely unicorn pictures.
info@lifehackedvisors.com. Thank you.
Peace.